Hello, everyone, and welcome to Greyhammer. Today, we're going to be doing our next episode of D&D for Dingbats. So, we've got a few things to cover here with dice and terms. It's become necessary to start defining key terms and talk about dice, tying up a lot of the past 3 episodes. If you haven't watched those, you should be able to see them in this playlist that this is a part of. These terms will help you understand what actions your characters can take, how good they are at making those kinds of actions. So a bit more information on your character. For dice, there's many kinds of dice in D&D, and they're used for different tasks and roles. Skills are based off your abilities, give a more magnified view of how your character performs at different tasks, and there's a variety of different terms that either modify your dice rolls or allow for various other abilities and such. So for dice, they're a major component of D&D, but despite it being a narrative game, dice are kind of how you quantify things. They're used to determine whether your character succeeds or fails when they take certain actions, along with how much damage they can do on attacks. Um, for notation, since this is kind of probably a gatekeeping thing with the notation for dice, like it could be a hindrance. Standard dice notation follows the following formula: XDS, where our X refers to the number of dice, D stands for dice, and S refers to the number of sides on the dice. So, for example, a 1d6, that is a 1 6-sided dice. A 1d20 is a 20-sided dice. Like a 2d6 is 2 6-sided dice. So, pretty simple, but it could be a little complicating for someone who's new. Standard dice. In D&D, the dice types that are used are D4s, D6s, D8s, D10s, D12s, and D20s. D20s are used to determine ability and attack rolls, while other types of dice typically represent damage. Things like D4s and D6 may be added to your D20 roll due to some spells or other abilities, but D20s are always for determining ability and attack rolls, and other dice are generally more for your attacks, your damage. Skills. Each skill is based off of an ability, and most abilities have multiple skills. If abilities represent your 30,000 view, like broad, oh, my character has 18 strength, so I know that he's a strong character. Skills provide like a 10x magnified view of your character. So you could say, like, my character really knows a lot about history, but maybe they're not the best. Even though they're smart, they may not know a lot about the wilderness. So skills are useful there. Strength. Strength only has one skill. It's athletics, and it represents your character's ability to carry and push things around, contest other characters in matters of strength, such as like arm wrestling, and make other feats of physical prowess. Explanation. Strength is a very powerful ability. Less skills are placed under the strength tree. Strength is used for most melee attacks, and therefore the characters require at least a moderate level of strength, so they kind of balance that out by only having one skill in there. Dexterity, you've got 3. Acrobatics, which refers to your character's physical life, and it's their ability to make flips and other finesse movements. Sleight of hand refers to your character's ability to manipulate objects without being noticed. And stealth. Stealth refers to a character's ability to hide and move without being seen. This is one of the most useful skills. Constitution, no skills at all. It's a super powerful ability to have high. No skills are placed in it because of so. It's used to determine the hit points of all characters, therefore it's very important to at least partially spec into Constitution. So yeah, things like Constitution that are super powerful skills, abilities, don't have any skills. Intelligence. This one has a lot because there's not much you do with your actual intelligence score. So Arcana refers to your character's knowledge of things that are magical in nature, spells, items, and rituals. History refers to a character's knowledge of past events of the world the character's in, governments, heroes, nations. Investigations, your character's ability to piece together the facts of the world, taking in information, forming conclusions. Nature refers to a character's knowledge of the natural world, beasts and plants, and monsters. And religion refers to a character's knowledge of various religions, deities, and spiritual beings. Now, wisdom. Again, a lot of important skills here. Animal handling is your character's ability to determine which actions to calm and control different animals. Insight is your character's ability to determine the motives behind someone's words or actions and see past deceptions. Medicine refers to your character's ability to determine which actions can heal and stabilize other characters. Uh, Perception refers to your character's ability to spot, hear, and even smell things that stand out in the world. And survival refers to your character's ability to determine tracks, medicinal herbs, and set up traps and tie knots. All kinds of useful things out in the woods. And then charisma. You've got kind of four um, social-based skills. Deception, your characters to mask your intentions or to just tell outright lies. I can already tell this is going to be a shorter episode, just FYI. Deception is great for a character with shady morals at best. Intimidation. Intimidation is your character's ability to bluff, make yourself look tough, or use your physical appearance to scare opponents away, aka barbarians. If you have a charisma built barbarian, which you're probably not, but intimidation will be decent on them. Performance. Performance can measure a variety of things, such as your ability to act, play musical instruments, or even act in a play. Um, so, performance could be very useful. And then persuasion is used for a character to negotiate, barter, convince other characters of your plans without using any of the shady methods of deception. So your lawful good characters can use persuasion. More on alignments later. Um, Advantage. Advantage refers to where you roll a d20. You can roll 2 dice instead of 1. You then discard the lowest roll, giving you a much higher chance of succeeding. Abilities that grant advantage are incredibly strong. Usually, the more you describe your actions, the more likely the DM is to grant advantage. We're going to cover a bit more on describing things in a little bit at the end of this episode, so might actually fill out a lot of the episode. But disadvantage. Disadvantage refers to where you roll a d20. You can roll 2 dice instead of 1. You then can discard the highest roll, giving you a much higher chance of failing. Some abilities cause enemies to attack with disadvantage, or the DM may grant disadvantage if the plan is poorly articulated or unrealistic for the world. Modifier. A modifier is the amount added to a dice roll. For example, if a character has a modifier of +2, then they can add 2 to the roll. I spelled that wrong. Therefore, if you roll a 12 on a d20, you instead rolled a 14. This is applied to the dice roll, not to each dice, and therefore you must roll 2 dice. If you must roll 2 dice, you do not apply the modifier as a +4. So, good to note there. Modifiers very useful. Skill proficiency. If you have proficiency in a skill, you gain an additional modifier to your rolls with that skill. This modifier changes with levels, but starts as a +2. So if you have a strength modifier of +3, proficiency in athletics, and you're level 1, you'll have a +5 in your athletics rolls. So that's super useful to know. Proficiency is going to be very important. Weapon proficiency. If you don't have proficiency in a weapon, you'll have disadvantage on attacks with it. We'll get a little bit into this later when we get into the nitty-gritty of building your character, because we're not even there yet. Armor proficiency. If you don't have proficiency in a type of armor, you have disadvantage on strength and dexterity checks and can't cast spells while you're wearing that armor. So, very important to be proficient in the type of armor. So now we're going to get into a little bit of explanation, and so we'll see how long this will take. When making skill rolls, refrain from saying, I make an intimidation check. Instead, try and come up with a way for your character to be intimidating, and your DM will ask you then to make the check. Each skill check has a certain difficulty rating known as a DC that either the DM specifies or there's a roll-off between the character and NPC or other characters. Example, if your character says they want to search the room for any clues as to who kidnapped the villager, The DM may ask for an investigation, set the DC, and then ask the player to roll for it. The player will then roll a 1d20, adding their intelligence modifier and their proficiency modifier if proficient in investigation. That's all I have, so let's just go into it a little bit more. So, like, for example, I talked about the DM will most likely grant advantage if you explain what you're doing. So let's just say, for example, athletics. Let's say you want to arm wrestle the some enemy, like you're proving your strength with an arm wrestling competition, and you're doing you're like, I'm gonna arm wrestle this guy, and your DM's like, okay, how are you arm wrestling? And you say, oh, well, I'm just gonna push my arm against theirs and just push down. Your DM's gonna be like, okay, make your roll. Boring. Instead, you could say, okay, I'm gonna square up, going to get my arm, lock it with theirs. And let's say, for example, maybe your character's not even the most strong. So you might say, I'm going to just try and hold him there at the mid ground and just stare him in the eyes and start just talking about how his mom never loved him and all this crap. And your DM may say, okay, make a intimidation check instead of making a strength check or an athletics check. Or maybe they'll say, make an intimidation check, and we'll add a modifier. If you succeed that, you'll have advantage on your athletic. Or you might say, like, okay, I'm going to attempt to twist their wrist into the action. And they might say, okay, we'll give you advantage on your athletics. Or they might say, hey, you can make a sleight of hand check instead of an athletics if you so desire. So being concise and explanative with what you're doing in D&D can be super useful. Explain how you're going in a sneak. Say, hey, I'm going to be taking steps, landing on my heel, and then just rolling onto my toes, just slowly. I've rubbed mud on my face and all this. So just things like that are really useful for a DM to be like, okay, I'm going to lower the DC because they explained how to do it, and the way that they explained makes sense to me. So there's less of it to do with intelligence, except you might be more precise about what you're trying to figure out instead of being like, oh, is the book magical? You might be like, oh, does it seem like the book maybe is, what's the origin of the book? And your DM might be like, oh, okay, roll history or arcana. Just things like that. It's going to make life easier for you and easier for your DM, which is great. I don't have to go over all skills, but like insight. I've seen people say when an NPC says something, they'll be insight check. Like, okay. Instead, you should be something like, hey, I want to see, is this character trying to mislead me in any way? And your DM's like, oh, make an insight check for him. Or they might even ask you to make a perception check to see any cue. Well, no, insight would make sense for cues. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for this episode. I think I did a pretty decent job giving you an explanation of how skills work. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. Next episode, I think we're going to get into more character creation, kind of get you locked in on that and feel comfortable with that. So I'll see you in the next episode. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye.